Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Zoom call and this conversation, this very important contribution to the now of our environment. Nell, thank you so much for allowing us to host this exhibition. Thanks, Anne and Kaneem, for joining us in the conversation. Your work is so important and connected. And thank you, Miles, for coordinating this wonderful exhibition. Without further ado, there's going to be a conversation for the next hour and time for questions at the end. The conversation is with Nell Gottlieb, the artist who is featured in this exhibition that runs through formally June 20th. Kaneem Smith, local artist, and Ann Johnson, artist, instructor at Prairie View A&M. Without further ado, let's start the conversation. Let it begin.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for showing up and spending your evening with us, talking about this very powerful exhibition. So I am Ann Johnson. That is Nell and Kaneem, and we're just kind of going to vibe and go back and forth and present to you the very important unification of our works, particularly as it relates to Nell's exhibition, Choked on Cotton. So first, we would like Nell to give us a little background on how she was moved to produce this body of work and how she came into this very interesting inheritance.
Thanks, Ann, and thanks, Michelle. This work brought together my life in Harpersville, Alabama, with my artistic practice for the first time. In 2018, I inherited our family's former plantation house, and we launched Klein Arts and Culture, which is a community nonprofit that owns the house and the land. And it's set up to bring art and education and culture in service of social justice. And so everything that we do needs to meet that criterion. And we want to honor the Black and white histories of the place. The Harpersville is a really interesting town because there are a lot of descendants of enslaved people from the house who are still there. And then our family has mostly moved away. And so we've come back now we've done 2 homecomings of the Black and white descendants of the place, and we've begun to do programming in the house. So as we walk through the exhibit, you'll see we start off with Klein, the house, and then we end up with Klein Arts and Culture and the homecomings.
All right, so Nell, if you could please talk about this piece called The Returning that kind of explores your returning as an adult to the Klein space.
Okay, well, it explores my returning, but it also explores the returning of these cotton hoers. So this, the images that are in the dark salmon color are from Dorothea Lange's 1937 photo of the cotton hoers in Mississippi. And I did this print, which is multi-layers, and it's called a reductive screen print, and then it has, because you do it in bits and pieces, and then I put the cotton hoers on top. So the cotton hoers are really returning to the house, and I think that's more important than my returning to the house, is the descendants are returning to the house as well.
I like that it's a very, reductive printing, leaves you the ability to create a very painterly effect, and the abstraction about the event, because it has to be kind of surreal to inherit that type of space, really works well. The way that you've formatted it, we can identify the house, but we can also identify the movement amongst the people. So I thought it was pretty effective, the way you created it.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, so this is where Kaneem and I come in. Kaneem Smith and myself, we did an exhibition called Harvest last summer, and it dealt heavily with slavery, the economy of slavery, the brutality of slavery, And Nell thought it would be kind of interesting to unify those two exhibitions with this talk. Some of you Houston folks in particular, had a chance to view this exhibition. It was at HMAC, the Houston Museum of African American Culture. And Kaneem and I have been wanting to exhibit together for years, and we finally were able to do it last summer. And so throughout this talk, we will bounce some of our works off in connection with some of Nell's works, and the way that the works just, you know, two different points of view. You're talking about African American women and a white woman, so you're seeing it from two different planes, but the work is still powerful in its own right. So this is exhibition shots from the exhibition Harvest. We'll get a little bit more into detail with the pieces that you are viewing. And one of the things that we did with that exhibition was the entry of the museum was the sign on the left. Mm-hmm. And it's designed to look like a runaway slave poster. So you were in the mood when you walked in. Okay. So Nell, if you could just give a little brief overview about the setting of the exhibition, because unfortunately everything is virtual and we cannot interact physically with your show.
Yes. So this is the Gallery of the Community Artist Collective in Houston. There are 3 walls that I have work on. This is the second and third wall that we see in this shot. And as you walk around, we're going to see next the entry shot. It starts with my childhood's view of being in the 1950s in this cotton plantation with my grandmother in Harpersville, Alabama. And well, here we are. And this has a map on the left, which we're going to talk about in more detail. And then there are 2 platters. One is, the top platter is of my baptism in the creek, which you can also see on the map. And then a platter that I did in homage to Thornton Dial, that one of my professors once told me when I tried to draw some cotton, well, you aren't Thornton Dial. So this is mine.
I was wondering where that title came from.
Where it came from. And then we're going to talk more about the plate that's on the far right, and later on. It's a platter of my grandmother's. Okay. So let's move on to the map. So this is the map. The brown in the this painting, it's a 4 foot by 6 foot hanging canvas painting that is made with dirt from the house, from outside the house. And that's all the brown is the actual soil from Harpersville, from Klein, that has cotton growing in it, cotton everywhere. And when I came back after a long time, that's what I saw. There was white cotton growing around the houses, you know, across the roads, everywhere. And it was just a sea of white. And so I sat back to reimagine my childhood. So you can see this is very childlike work. All of the houses face towards us. And so it's the way I see it in my mind's eye. And while I was doing this work, I learned about an exhibit at the Blanton Museum in Austin of maps from the 16th century Mexico, in which indigenous artists had made maps that were sent back to colonial Spain to talk about, here's the new geography, you know, geography of the new world. And I had never thought about Klein as being colonial, the house as being colonial. And seeing those maps and doing this at the same time made me realize, you know, I need to set off to think about this, that we're a cotton plantation in the, you know, plantation economy as part of you know, global colonialism. And I had never, ever seen it that way before. I thought, yes, you know, we were colonists in Jamestown, right? But no, we're participating in the colonial world. So the maps that I saw at the Blanton had footprints where people that would show the way you would traverse to go around whatever you were looking at. And so I have footprints. So these footprints show my trajectory, the paths that I took. I went to the barn. So the house is the White House on the right. The barn is directly in front of that. And then there is the old antebellum root cellar that has a tin top where the caretaker of Klein lived during the 50s when I was there. So you can see the well, you can see the swamp below. Then as you go across, my whole world was circumscribed in this map. So it goes over to Logan's Creek on the far top left. That's where we went swimming every day. There was no running water or plumbing in the house. And it has the house of my childhood friend from there, whom I reconnected with 60 years later. So, so this is really, I guess, an idealized view of how I saw the place where I stayed with my grandmother during the 50s.
Very, very detailed. Move on. I was interested in this piece because the way you positioned yourself on top of the cotton in the field in a very illustrative light, but there was the cotton itself just creates such a compact atmosphere. And then when you look into everything that goes into growing and picking cotton and everything, you know, there's so many different dynamics to it. And it also reminds me of a Gordon Parks photograph of a little boy laying that way. So what were your thoughts? There's something ascending about this piece.
Well, this is on the second wall as we move through, and this is when I really began to think about what is my own complicity in this. So I have a piece in here called "My Inheritance, My Own Complicity." In the sort of next stage of my thought, I'm still on a journey about this, but the role of the cotton took this inordinate place in it, and I actually was dreaming about this. I knew I was going to make some work that looked like this, and I didn't know what it was going to be like, but now here it is. So I do think, like Ann says, you know, it depends on your lens through which you see this, and for me, it was like a dream. I was flying. I was either lying in state in the cotton, on top of the cotton. I was lying on the shoulders of the people who worked the cotton. I was lying on cotton. That's what brought my family, you know, some wealth and position back 100 years ago. And it was like, what do I do with this? Being engulfed by cotton, you know, I've thought about walking into the beast. Here I'm lying on top of the beast. So certainly the labor is really important. You know, who were the laborers here? And this cotton field is this generation of cotton field, but I think this exhibition talks about layers of time, and you go back generations as you look at this.
And the title is charged, very charging, particularly with what's happening now, Choked on Cotton. Mm-hmm. Just FYI, are the cotton fields still being harvested?
Oh, there's inside the room here next to this particular painting, there's a video on an iPad, and I took it, I guess last summer, and I was standing in an antebellum cemetery it's on the map, it's on the far left side. And I had my iPhone, and there was a big cotton harvester that came by, one that does 12 rows at a time and spits out bales. And so I'm standing taking a picture, you know, as the cotton harvester goes by, and realizing, you know, how different the labor and the harvest is of cotton than what it was. And there I was standing in the antebellum cemetery, where our vice president of Klein Arts and Culture, who's African American, some of his ancestors are buried in there, along with actually some of my distant cousins' ancestors. So yeah, it's crazy how cotton has evolved. And you think about cotton from slavery, enslaved people did it, then it was sharecroppers, and now it's come to, you know, the contemporary cotton farmer.
Yeah.
Did you use more of the dirt in that piece as well from the land?
The dirt is darker because I met an artist from Birmingham who works in natural pigments, and he told me, Doug Belos, he told me to bake the dirt. And so I baked the dirt, but I did it for longer than he said, and I think I roasted it. So you can see it came out really
Beautiful
darker than the first.
cotton bowls really pop out at you. I really love that
one.
visually.
One of the things that I don't know if I was clear about when we decided to do this talk, Nell asked Kaneem and I to select a few pieces that we found interesting, and then she selected pieces of ours that she found interesting. I'm kind of obsessed with this one. I find this one to be very interesting because I'm obsessed with reflection and shadow. As a printmaker, I'm an experimental printmaker, and sometimes I use shadows in my printmaking. And the dynamics of this piece with the cotton field and the cotton bowls, and then the image of your shadow, to me is so strong and overbearing, because when the slaves are in the field, they always had that shadow of the overseer in their presence. Mm-hmm. And then your illustration creates a childlike innocence from another view. And I just think this is such a powerful image. To me, one of the more powerful images in the show because of that, the dynamics of the shadow and then that light illustration to the sides. What was your thinking when you put this piece together?
Well, and you've just added an amazing layer to it, because I never thought of it as the shadow of the overseer. Mm-hmm. And I saw it as myself. Well, first I took that picture and I thought, oh my God, this is so bad, my shadow is in it. And I'm standing actually by my childhood friend's cotton field. This is 10 feet from her house. Her house is surrounded totally by cotton. And I'm taking this picture. And then as I looked at it, I saw the shadow and thought, oh, I'm witnessing myself. And then I did a series of drawings on top of photographs, and this is one of those. And this is part of the complicity idea. This is as I've begun to understand my familial background and my own, debt, my own ownership of this heritage.
Okay. So this is one of my pieces, and Nell had the opportunity, we did a studio visit at my house last summer. And so while Kaneem and I were preparing for the Harvest exhibition, as a printmaker, I always challenge myself to try something different because I just get bored with printing on paper. And so I thought, anyone familiar with my work knows that I print on feathers and leaves and stuff. And I was like, well, let me just try to print on cotton and see what happens. And then it ended up being so emotional. So I used the intaglio method, and this is me without my glasses. And I kind of connected this with witness because I titled it Lost and Found, because that is the nature of the slave. You're lost, you're found, maybe you're never found, but you're certainly lost and have been stolen. And so this was one of those pieces in the Harvest exhibition that probably a lot of people miss because it's so small. It was on a wall kind of next to a larger piece. But the whole idea of printing on cotton, I didn't realize the magnitude it would have on me because I just felt that instant, another direct connection with slavery, particularly when you learn the difference between cotton ball, the little cotton pieces that you buy at Hobby Lobby that are just cotton balls as compared to a real cotton bowl. And a real cotton bowl, you can feel the seeds. And then that just takes you somewhere else. So I did this auction block series where I wanted to print contemporary images on cotton and then put them on a cotton block, on an auction block. And then that contemporary, the word I'm trying to say, makes the images more contemporary to a terrible history. So it unifies it too. You hear the kids now saying, I'm not my ancestors. Well, really you are, you're just fighting. They allowed you to fight the fight that you're fighting now. So that was my intention with this piece, Lost and Found, if you have any comments, either of you.
Well, I think it's so amazing to have it next to me. I've done some work of my child, with me as a child and some of the stuff. The cotton piece that we showed is me as an adult, but the fact that we both personally are in art, you know, in art that we have brought from inside into cotton, and that it has, you know, personal meaning.
Right, right. And then there's an enclosure in the centerpiece. So it's like that history is in the glass case.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Thank you. Nell particularly asked me to include this piece. Last summer, I started dealing with the history of gynecology. If you don't know it, you should certainly research it. It's terrible what was going on. Basically, female slaves were used as lab rats. You know, they were butchered in the name of gynecology and science. And so I did a couple of pieces that were in the Harvest exhibition and in another exhibition I did called Acknowledge at Hooks Epstein. Again, an image is printed on cotton. I put her in a beaker to represent the idea of science that is an actual cotton bowl. I actually ordered cotton from a plantation. Who knew you could do that? These are some of the details of that piece, which has images trapped in a cage, you know, as a caged animal, because in the end, slaves were considered property, chatels. So that was the history of gynecology. Nell, if you want to mention why you wanted me to share this.
Well, when I first saw this, I was horrified. I mean, I come from a family of doctors on both sides, and I have two on my mother and father's side each, antebellum doctors. So there have been generations of them, and now my in-laws are doctors, got one on the call, and his daughter and my daughter are both doctors. So it's like how the medical profession, you know, has treated people. And this was, oh my God, you know, sort of shook me a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Kaneem, you selected this piece.
I did. Cotton Economy 1, one of Nell Gottlieb's pieces in the show. I was really attracted to this piece. Now, I haven't physically seen the show. I've only seen it virtually online. So I would love to get a sense of the scale of the work. For me, it seems very monumental from how I look at it visually on screen. I can imagine it being quite large. And with my own work, to make a connection with my own work and how I was drawn to this particular piece, is that there's an erasure. The cotton is there, but it's not there. So you have the object or the element or something that connects you to the cotton without you having to have the cotton actually there. But I love the fact that it's in the background. It is there and it isn't there. I love that. And I love the idea of this silhouette or this ghost image that she's created. And I assumed it was torn out. I assumed it was like hand torn wallpaper. But because I'm not a printmaker, I'm a sculptor. Sculptor of mixed media, so I don't do a lot of printing. I barely do any printing. But I would love to know, Nell, what the process was in putting this together.
Okay, well, this is kind of the world of Photoshop and inkjet printing, this is the only piece I've done like this. It's not monumental. It's, I think it's about 18 by 22 inches.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so you print out, I printed out an image of the house and an image that had cotton, that I'd made a cotton pattern on Photoshop. And then on one sheet, I cut out the house. So it is erased. It's been cut out by hand with an X-Acto knife. And I had some blood on it some of it I took off, some of it I left on. Wow. And for me, it just showed, so the two pieces, when you would see it in person, you would notice that it has dimensionality to it, that there are two pieces, because it's not in a frame, it's hung with the two pieces, you know, open. And what else to say? There's cotton on top of it, cotton inside it, cotton underneath it.
Is it meant to represent a ghost or the idea of the past? And why have it why have like the white or the negative, because it could have been another color, it could have been anything, but
Could have been anything.
also it
but
reminds me of cotton as well. So why is it the cutout?
I mean, I hadn't thought about it in the beginning, but in sitting here,
Yeah.
whiteness, white for ghost,
Yeah.
white for cotton, it's white. Yeah.
Yes, my artists talk.
I love it. I love it.
Wonderful
I
to
love
be
the
back.
idea, Kaneem, that you said negative.
Yeah.
When you first saw it, it looked like a negative to you.
And that has a bunch of meaning. That's loaded. Yeah.
Right, right. You can drink cotton economy negative because, it flows like that. All right. And Kaneem, for those of you who are not familiar with her work, one of my favorite artists in Houston, does a lot of large scale soft sculptures. This is the place where she and Nell first met at the Galveston Arts Center. Kaneem, you could talk about the installation.
This is an exhibition I did at the Galveston Arts Center. I believe it was at the towards the end, like October, November of 2017. I had an amazing experience putting together the works with curator Dennis Nance, because I really didn't have an idea how this was going to all come out and how it would be interpreted by the audience. Because what I wanted to do is to talk about, like, have the work be aesthetically my work, but I also like to incorporate the place in which I'm showing the work and connect it. And with Galveston, there's this history that maybe a lot of people know about, maybe not, of African Americans working along that railroad and actually living right where the railroad, right where the rail tracks run through the town of Galveston. And near that, and then next to that are the cotton storage facilities. And there are a lot of them, some of them are abandoned, some of them are still being used, but I wanted to create a memorial and homage to the forgotten or the people, or the history of African Americans in the workers in Galveston. I wanted to memorialize that in some way, honor that in some way, connect it some way, and utilize materials I love working with, but also I make connections to me being a woman of color, Black woman. Burlap is one of my primary means I love to work with. And this show, Nell's show, being about cotton, you don't physically see the cotton on the piece itself. Here's a bit of a close-up, but the elements of what represents cotton are there. Holding the piece down, actually anchoring it to the floor. You may not be able to see it in the photo, but they're actually cotton weights on, there are 6 cotton weights on the piece itself, anchoring it down. And I do have railroad ties, vintage railroad ties throughout the piece, but it's supposed to, and connecting more to our history as displaced, we are descendants of displaced people here in America. And all of us seeing that idea of the slave diagram, the drawing, I wanted to bring that element in there, but do it in a way that is connecting the town of Galveston and the railroad and cotton. And also being a sculptor, not only do I want to use already ready-made or readily available elements, I carved, I took dark brown wax, which is called, it's a dark brown wax that's generally used for casting like industrial metals to be used in industry. And I wanted to, so I cast actual adult size leg and arm ligaments, leg and arm bones, human bones. And those are actually hand carved wax. So those represent an individual. So you can imagine just the idea of it is also, it's also somewhat like a cemetery as well. So I was making all these connections with the piece. And Nell, this is where Nell and I met, and we really connected there. And Nell, if you could talk a bit about what's like how we met and within the show and what inspired you.
Well, you talked to me about the work. I mean, you know, the work that we've just looked at is incredibly powerful with the bones and you know, there's so many levels and so many interpretations of this. And I just found myself walking around it, looking at it, and then there you were. We're going to go through some of the other things that were in it too, but this piece, it really spoke to me. And then we talked about it, and
I'll say,
has
Kaneem, I've
everything in
never
it.
seen anyone, I'm sorry now.
Oh,
I've
it's
never
around,
seen
it's around
anyone,
10 feet, 10 feet long. It's around 10 feet.
okay. I've never seen anyone transform that diagram this way. Not this abstractly. It's so powerful. And
I appreciate that people can see it because I didn't know if it would be obvious or not because it is abstract.
yeah, I didn't see it initially until I always, you know, tell my students, don't look at the work, look into it.
Yes.
And starting to look into it, I can certainly see it. Such a powerful piece. Okay. So one thing that I also love, Kaneem, is your collection of cotton bale weights.
Yes.
Such a powerful thing to have. And we did 2 shows together in 2 years. The She Matters, isn't it crazy how all this is full circle?
Oh.
We did the She Matters exhibition and How Do I Say Her Name?
Yes.
Which is where your quilt piece was exhibited. And then for Harvest, you graciously let me borrow one of your weights. And I wanted to show an actual basket because, as we know, there were certain pounds that slaves were required to pick every day. You know, a little kid might have a basket like this, or they'll have the long bags draped on their shoulders. So I wanted to share, and I wanted to give people something, couldn't touch it, you know, they wanted to see an actual basket. That's the actual, you can barely make out the image, but that is an image of a little girl. You can barely see it, but that is an image of a little girl in the middle. So if you could talk about your piece, the quilts, the weights.
Okay. The piece on the left that Anne mentioned, that piece was in the Galveston show, but it was also in the How Do I Say My Name? How do I say her name? The Sandra Bland show, that amazing show that Anne curated back in, what was it,
2017.
2017. And then actually I showed this piece a couple of times with Anne, but I felt very strongly about including it in the Sandra Bland exhibition because we as women of color, we're attached to this legacy, this history that is part of us. It weighs us down, but our like ancestrally, our ancestors who were enslaved, what kept them going? What kept them going in the most dire and extreme circumstances that you can imagine a human being in? What kept them going is the hope for the future, the hope for the generation that they're enslaved, but the hope that the children that would come after them, the people that would come after their legacy that would come after them, would be freed. And I wanted to, and me being a fiber-based artist, and the idea of a quilt and connecting that to also enslaved people working on plantations, you know, winters are cold, keeping the family warm and alive, putting together remnants of whatever you had to make these quilts. And I wanted it to become figurative and sort of float like it's sort of this, the weight of the pain of what the cotton scale represents, but also the freeing element of the way I wanted the quilt that's actually hanging on. It's actually hung on it. It's hung on it. It's weighted on it, but also it's floating, because we women of color, we persevere. It's just, I mean, obviously, I think we're pretty amazing, but it's just this idea that there's a strength and a dignity to that I wanted to have to the piece. It's almost like, yes, we're connected to this history, but there is, there's a sense of pride in that, and coming from that, and getting out of that and continuing on, and seeing basically our legacy being continued, and coming out of that pain and out of that struggle.
And it's also shaped like a star in this particular
Yes.
photograph.
That too. Yep.
Yeah, the North Star.
The North Star. Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally resonate to the quilt and what you're talking about with regard to your ancestors, your women ancestors in the quilt. Before I even dreamed of coming back to Klein and the whole thing, I started sleeping under a quilt that my great grandmother had made.
Wow.
And it was like, you know, she to me is my strong ancestor. And we're going to see her picture at the end of the talk tonight. And so I just love it, because I do think quilt care, needlework, assembling things, you know, it's all wonderful.
And then with the significance of the weight, which relates directly to economy.
Yeah.
These are the larger bags, if you want to talk about those for a second. And I will point out the Klein house is in Alabama, and you can see the Geesville, Alabama references on those panels in the back.
Yes. So again, with Anne so powerfully works with cotton, I wanted to contribute to what she's doing, but complement it with maybe some other ideas of things that are related or connected to it. These are they're modeled after crocus sacks, or basically cotton bags. The field bags that are about, they range in size, but I was doing some research and I found some that were quite long. One was maybe 14 feet, like really a long bag that you can imagine someone having to drag through the field and having to fill by the end of the day. I wanted it to be figurative, so with this triptych, it's almost like these three figures kind of sort of dragged against the ground, attached, and so it's suspended from the ceiling. But I wanted it to hit the ground and kind of drag itself, so it's the implied weight of what it represents. And actually, with this piece, Anne is also included in this piece, so it's sort of collaborative. You can't really see it from this angle, but her cotton is inside the bags themselves. And I think you put one of your prints inside one of the pieces.
There we go.
Put one in there.
Yeah.
But I love that connectedness that happened with that.
Yeah, one of the most powerful aspects of, and this was Dominic's idea, of the Harvest exhibition, was creating rows of cotton.
Yeah.
To create a plantation vibe and a plantation feel. So you saw these rows. We almost had to put up a sign that said, "Please don't pick the cotton."
Yes.
But
yeah.
We had these rows of cotton on these black pedestals. So you were immediately drawn to the plantation. And if you got close to the cotton bolls, you would see, as you can see at the image on the right, a face printed directly onto the cotton. And then in your background, you see these large cotton the bags, you know, so it was in your face. You know, we tried to make it as eloquent as we could, but it was still in your face, and that's what made it powerful.
Oh, and the pieces in the back are also they're cotton. It's cotton canvas that's been hand dyed and stretched over a wooden frame. So they're almost like I don't want to say necessarily paintings, but sort of like this, like a mixed media two-dimensional piece that's, it's very much about the quilt, but at the same time, there's a formalism to it, a dignity to it that I wanted to bring to the panels. And I think it just really married well with Anne's work, really did in the show.
I think
if you had a chance to see it in the audience, awesome. You're very lucky. If you didn't, I'm sorry to get a chance to see it.
Yes, we don't have great pictures.
Yes. Oh yeah, I love this.
Nell, Kaneem and I both selected this piece, and audience, we only have a couple slides left.
Oh.
You and I, Kaneem and I both selected this piece, looking at the plantation house, and of course the significance of the penny. You know, the penny is the only brown coin. Lincoln is, his back is to the other presidents on the coins. It's the least valuable coin. And then the way that you place the pennies onto this piece like you would a row of cotton.
Mhm.
And then you have the cotton linters on the pieces, and brilliantly use the paint chips to create those small houses. My parents live in North Carolina, and sometimes I'll take a train from Charlotte to High Point. And what's always fascinating to me is the number of slave houses that still exist, that you still see on the train.
High Point.
Yeah, between Charlotte and High
Wow.
Point, North Carolina, on the
Yeah.
train. It's amazing that you see so many small slave houses
Still
that
there.
are still exist. And so if you want to give us a little insight on this, and then Kaneem, you could mention why you selected this piece as well.
I think you pointed out all the major pieces of it. The pennies stick out for about, I don't know, half an inch, so they cast a shadow. And they're pennies. At first I was sort of doing a flag or something, then I sort of got the pennies going. And you'll notice that most of the monetary value of the pennies are towards the left rather than the right over the houses. And one day I was in, I think it was Lowe's, and they have these paint chips, and they're many, many white house paint chips. And these are ones that all have white in the name. You know, it's dreamy white, nice white, white cotton. And I was just struck by that. And so this spoke to me as the cotton economy, the money that was the basis of it all, and how the cotton economy has shaped where we are today. You know.
And visually, again, the visual elements, the background. I wanted to ask you now. Is it? Tell me what are the materials? What's it? Is it on a panel?
It's a collage. It's a collage on stretched canvas, and so I started with a drawing of the house, a line drawing, and then surrounded it with cotton that I took, pictures that I took from surrounding the house, the fields surrounding the house, and then I attached the.
And I love the significance of what the houses actually are. That you I don't know if you mentioned that or not. That they're they're paint strip samples.
Mm-hmm.
White ones, different types of white. You know,
Right.
so I really loved that.
Okay. I think this is my last piece to share, because you did that series on the economy, you know, the money. That's what cotton was. And of course, the slaves did the labor. So while I was thrifting at that same place, it's a great thrift store, I found this handmade bank. And I put an image, this is an image of a little girl printed on cotton inside of the jar, and then 2 leaves of what would be slaves on the other side. And it's called anxiety because, of course, one of the slaves' biggest fear, unfortunately, you know, having to live the life that they live, was the separation of family. And, you know, if someone's husband or wife didn't pick enough cotton, the master could sell them. So you have that anxiety of being sold and separated. So this piece was created that way. It's actually a working bank. You could I actually had coins and cowrie shells in there. You could slide it and it would actually fall out. So I thought that, you know, because you did focus on the economy of cotton, that we need to see the flip side of that. What happens to the people who are doing the work? And so that's what that piece was about. And then we'll wrap it up with the plates. We'll start with this plate first, and then the figurative plates.
Okay, so this plate was actually my grandmother's platter. It's and I think she probably got it in 1920, and I put cotton linter on it to show that the you know, this was the first harvest of Klein. The house was this cotton, and then the show ends with the last the just called Harvest, which, shall we go to that now, Ann, because it's so late? So this is a grid of 12 plates, and they're the same pattern. My grandmother had the pattern. We grew up using that pattern at all our family celebrations. And then when I got married in 1969, the pattern came back and was for sale again. So I selected the pattern. And then I found these plates in the thrift store. So this platter is very important. This pattern is important to me. And it has a basket with fruit and flowers on it as the main motif. And there's a central medallion that's in it. So this installation is built on the two plates in the center, which are the two matriarchs. So on the left is Lucy Wallace Baker, who is the ancestor of one of our board members. And she was enslaved on the Wallace place. And then the woman on the right is my great-grandmother, whose quilt I was sleeping underneath. And surrounding these two women are their descendants at the homecoming. And so there are images all around of coming together in homecoming.
And then this was the original from
So
inside of Klein. Yeah.
First and installed them at the house during the homecoming. And so they were just sort of watching over us all as we came together.
And I thought it's also important to note that you did fire those images to the plates.
They are. They're iron oxide decals and enamel decals that are fired into the glaze of the plate. So you put them in the kiln to 1475 degrees.
Okay. All right. And that's matriarchs. So in the interest of time and questions, we would like to thank you. Great crowd. If you have any questions, I'm going to stop the screen share. And if you want to show us who you are and you have any questions, if Miles has any questions, we'll be glad to address those. And thank you.
It's fun to see people come on.
Yes. Everybody. Yeah, I had a question. Up here. Okay.
I know the chat room's getting to a whole nother kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I see that.
Yes, unmute yourselves to ask a question. That would be great. And if there are any questions coming up, Miles can ask them from the chat. I see that there have been a number of them.
Well, I have a question. I thought it was very interesting, your opportunity to meet and talk with each other, prior to this exhibit, and that even going back to 2019, you were already beginning to have some conversations. Your work tending to move along the same vein in a sense, at least an approach to understanding cotton. So tell me a little bit about that experience with each other, getting to know each other.
Well, I sort of stalked Ann and Kaneem because I saw their work and I thought, oh my God, this is so wonderful. And I want to talk to these artists and these women about their work. And I know, we come about it from different lenses, different points of view, but it's really been wonderful to be doing this together and have the conversation now.
Yeah, I ran into Nell in the hallways of the collective, and we just kind of struck a relationship and thought about doing a studio visit. But as it relates to this subject, when I met her, she told me about her inheritance. And that was before I had started printing on cotton. Mm-hmm. And just thought, wow, what a fascinating thing to get, as an entire plantation. And Kaneem and I mean, of course, we've known each other for years. Yes. And I was aware of, the weave queen and the bags and the significance of the bags. And I just thought it would work well together. And Dr. Trotty, we have talked about the three of us doing a show at Klein. Yes. Together. I think we have to now.
2021, come to Alabama.
Hopefully we can go and we can all be there and there won't be any mask involved. And we can actually touch somebody again. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Somebody in the chat mentioned Delita Martin. That is my Rue sister. Rabea is in here somewhere too, the Artist Collective Rue. Delita did do a series of plates. I don't know if you saw them now.
I did.
They were at the Art Week Houston, and they were also in Austin. And somebody made that connection. Difference being with Delita's plates, they were hand-drawn images. And they filled up the entire gallery space with a large dinner table.
And the plates were all around you. I was there.
Right.
Yeah, I saw you.
Yeah, and they were all white. Yeah.
I had a comment or question. When you had the piece shown, Cotton Economy 1, and Nell mentioned that even though you couldn't really see it, that there was blood when she gave her explanation. And for some reason, I could not see any, sign of the blood, nothing red on it or the like. And I was wondering if she could explain that just a little more.
I guess I was being kind of a drama queen. When I made it, I cut out all the cutouts there with an X-Acto knife, and I kept pricking my finger. And so I got blood like around the edges and some on the white of the house. And we sanded a lot of it off. And I thought, well, I should just leave it. And then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't leave it, And so while that was happening, I was thinking about, the blood and what that means in that context. So it was more important while I was doing it, while it was red. Then it turns kind of dark brown, and then I was taking it off, making it white and clean, right?
Well, I'll have to look at it again. Okay.
That was ancestors now.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Hello. My name is Andrew Davis.
Hey, Andrew.
What's up? How y'all doing today? Do you have a record of the slaves that have worked on that plantation?
We do. And in fact, with Klein Arts and Culture, we've been delving into that history. We actually have an intern this summer who is working on the Black narrative of the house. There are two men in Harpersville who are, I call them citizen historians, and they're both African American. They're both descended from the place. And one has his own history house, which is his 100-year-old family house. And it's totally plastered everywhere in pictures and articles that he's curated. And he's the great-grandson of the woman in the plates, the matriarch Lucy Wallace Baker. And he had her tintypes from there. So there are slave lists. And he has been following them through the census documents after that to look at it. So we don't know everybody, and there are named people, but there are records that do list names.
That's great. For the ones that you all have located, do you feel that they are entitled to a sort of reparation from the labor that their ancestors put on you all's land? Also, the expansion of that to bring the floor to Anne as well. From my understanding, and Kaneem's work approaches cotton from a sense of repurposing, similar to how like I've reclaimed like the N-word. It would more so seem like Miss Nell's sense of it comes from a sense of remembering. And so I'm wondering how those two can clash and coexist when one person's coming from a sense of reclaiming and repurposing, and another person's coming from a sense of remembrance.
I think you're telling both sides of the story. Rhett Collier, not sure who you are, but you have screen shared us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we really see your business, Rhett. There we go. Okay. I think it tells, I mean, it's going to be different, Andrew, because we're coming from two different perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's
yeah. Okay, now nobody touch screen sharing. Okay. Now we're in your business. There we go. Don't touch nothing else. Okay. We of course come from two different perspectives. You know, it's intimately personal. I can speak for myself. Dealing with it. I had a hard time just writing the artist statement, you know, and my work at some point has always been involved with race naturally. But I think as artists, the work can coexist because these are conversations both sides need to have together, should have had, and need to reconcile with. The fact that she's in touch with the other side of that family, and you know, they've all worked together, been able to have homecomings. I think that's something powerful because, you know, in the end, we all are related to somebody that we know master was creeping, you know, so we all have relatives out there. I don't know, Kaneem, how you feel about it, but I think the work can coexist for the better and not the bad.
I agree with that. You're right. Our perspective is going to be different than Nell's. Well, I should say we're coming at it from a different angle, but I mean, you're right. Speaking for myself, I am reappropriating the found materials because I include them in the made works that so it is a form of reappropriation. You're right about that.
And I think we're in, the powerful part of this is that we're in dialogue with each other through the work and through this personal conversation and the conversation that we're having now. And I do think that difficult conversations need to be had. And some of my interpretation, I think, you know, it's not the same as Anne and Kaneem's. You know, I came about this through a place of remembrance. It's true. And this whole exhibition is looking at first my remembrance and then how I begin to process it. And it's a journey that I'm on. I mean, it's a journey. And do I believe in reparations? Yes, I think there needs to be some kind of reparation. And from my family standpoint, or my standpoint too, you know, we gave the house to Klein Arts and Culture, which is giving it to the community. And I see that as helping to pay the debt that we owe the people who labored and were enslaved by us. It's been fabulous having these reunions and having, you know, people coming together, and we sit around in a circle and have a facilitated conversation. We meet in the cemetery. We have an African American and a white Wallace cemetery side by side, and we meet and celebrate. Really celebrate the ancestors. We meet in the African American cemetery. So it's something that's been meaningful on I think both sides of the Wallace families that have been coming to it.
Any other questions? Alicia, I see you, girl. It's been moons. Any other questions, anybody? Comments?
I'll say Michelle
No, I love them.
just wrote, if anybody feels comfortable coming out in Houston, we have the gallery open by appointment from 12 to 5 on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I've been coming, and Michelle and I have really gotten to know each other. It's been fabulous. That's been one of the wonderful, you know, side effects of all of this.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the plans for Klein Arts and Culture, the cultural activities that you're considering?
Well, we had in January of 2020, we had the Alabama Dance Festival had a dance performance by the Wadman Davis Dance Company, which it's an African-American dance company, and they have been researching slavery and the Southern past. And they did amazing, powerful work. And we just had a video come out from Alabama Public Television about that dance performance, and I'll put it on my website, where they were bringing the embodied African American presence back into the house. And it was about, it's about re-envisioning enslaved labor in the house, holding the trays and so on. And it was amazing. So that to me is the way art can open up the conversation, because that was a powerful performance that hit everybody. It's like, because you walked room to room with the dancers, and there were 40 people allowed at a time to follow through. So it was very intimate and personal. And we're working with the writers in the schools program we were going to start this spring. COVID has put us back, but we're going to be bringing school children, middle schoolers who are in this writing program at Vincent, which is it's the school system that serves Harpersville, to the house to, for them to think and reflect and develop writing about the ancestors and the generations and what the house means to them. And we're having artists come out. Miles College, Tony Bingham from Miles College, which is in Birmingham and is an historically Black college, is going to do a praise house out there using the timber that got taken out that was rotten as part of the reflooring, some of the reflooring we did. And he's also done some, I can't think of the word, camera obscura photographs through a tiny little hole that's in the small outbuilding that's a house. So we want it to be like an artist residency. We want students to come, both K through 12 students, but also the University of Alabama at Birmingham. We had some people who were supposed to come out, during the spring photography class. They're starting a cultural heritage management program at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and we want to be intimately associated with that. So that's the kind of thing that we're doing. And every year we'll have our homecoming. We hope to bring musicians out. There's an old time music following that wants to come out and be part of the house. So we want the house to be part of the community and people to be coming, have open houses so that people can be used to being in their house. Right?
What is the website for?
My website is, which is where I'm going to put this, is www.nellgottlieb.com. And the Klein website is Klein Arts A&D Culture. Maybe Miles is going to write it here.
Yeah, put that in the chat.
That already has about the program, and I will be I haven't posted the dance performance video yet, but I will. I'll do it tonight.
Okay.
We just got it.
Thank you.
Let me mention that I was fortunate to attend one of the dance performances. It was magical and extraordinary, and the film itself, it gives you a good glimpse of it. Special event.
To get that up right away.
Yeah.
Can I say something? I cannot turn on my camera, Nell, for some reason. So I'm just have my name, but can I say something about your film and some of the, and just my reflections on what you're doing here? It's Anna, by the way.
Oh, hi, Anna. I thought I recognized your voice.
Yeah, but I can't turn on the camera for some reason. So I'm locked out. But when I saw the film and just watching you all today, I think of the power of art is to change. To change us is it's just really powerful. But I think one of the things that I really have come to appreciate about your work and the work of the three of you here together is the collaborative power of, or the power of collaborative work. People come together. They come together with their own perspectives, and that in itself is part of what you're doing here, and what you're doing there at the Klein house. Yeah, really powerful.
Thank you, Anna. Anna's a Jungian therapist who brought me and her together in conversation back when we were first doing this at the Jung Center to talk about a return to the plantation, a remembered past, like I was trying to reincorporate the part of me that had been separated. So thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm trying to check the chat. I think I got everybody. If there are not any other questions or comments, we certainly thank you all.
I don't know if anybody heard my voice because I've been listening. I just want you to know that I enjoyed everything, and I'm wiser as a result. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here. It warms my heart.
It's a great crowd for online. Thank you, Ms. Kramer. I see your little hands. Computer can find that button.
And thank you, Ann, for moderating this. You did a beautiful, beautiful job.
Anytime.
Thank you,
Anytime.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, goodbye, everybody.
You all be safe and be well out there.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. And you can, again, make an appointment at the Collective if you want to see the show personally. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Bye.